I feel like the biggest lesson that I learned from them, two things. One of them was attention to detail. And when we used to organize events at Lauder, we would do things in army time just to make sure it was like very regimented. The other thing I learned is that PR is just about making people comfortable. It's about being kind and generous and making the other people feel comfortable.
Hello, beautiful people, and welcome to the next episode of the Beauty and the Brand podcast. We're here with PR extraordinaire publicist Aimee Majoros, and today we're talking about all things PR for emerging brands, which Aimee has so much experience with, basically launching indie beauty brands into the media stratosphere. So welcome, Aimee.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
It's so great to have you here. It's always, Aimee and I have known each other for years, if not decades at this point.
Eons.
Yes. So it's a treat to have her on here. And we're going to dive right in. So tell us a little bit about your backstory. Like, what got you into PR in the first place? Was there like a specific moment or experience that made you realize, like, this is what I want to do?
Well, I got into PR very, very much by accident. I got into the beauty industry by accident. I didn't really know what PR was when I was interviewed for my first job in PR. I was working at the Estee Lauder companies in the creative department, which is the advertising department. And when I interviewed for my original job there, I went to HR, someone referred me, and they said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know what you do here. I like photography. That's what I'm really into," because I went to college for art history and I was planning to go to grad school for history of photography. And I was just going to stick around and work for a couple of years while I figured that out. I was never planning on this being my career. I wanted to be an art history teacher with big beads, and I wanted to be an academic. So I ended up they said, "Oh, you like photography, so we'll put you in the advertising department." And we had this internal elevator at Estee Lauder. And the elevator, Estee Lauder had, I think, 5 floors in the building, in the General Motors building. And part of my job was to take things up to the marketing department, which was on another floor. And every time I often took the elevator, and there was this woman who was she was dressed amazing. She was super chic and cool. And she would talk to me in the elevator, and we would have these conversations, and I would see her all the time. I never knew her name. I just thought, wow, this really amazing woman is talking to me. And one day I got a call from HR, and they said, "You've been requested by somebody on the PR floor to interview." And I said, "I don't understand, because I never applied for a job in PR. I still really don't know what PR is." And they said, "Well, they requested you, and you need to go on this interview." So I went up on the internal elevator to my interview, and there was my friend from the elevator who met me, Sandy Markman, who met me at the elevator. And, I interviewed with Sandy, and she said, "This is what you'll do. You can do this. You can definitely do this. And here's where you'll sit." And that was my first job in PR. I worked in court. It was totally an accident. I was like, "But I don't know if I can do this." But Sandy thought I could. And it was my first job in PR. It was in Estee Lauder corporate. So working with the Lauder family and the executives.
Wow. That's such an incredible story, and so similar to my own elevator story. I had an elevator story with Felicia Milevich. It's so similar. And how kismet. I mean, how kismet that you both met in the elevator and you just kept passing, bumping into each other until it led to your first job. And so what happened after that? What did you... What happened after that? Tell me more about, what was that first job like?
It was amazing, because all of a sudden I had all this access to the Lauders, who were, first of all, the nicest people ever, but it was also I can't believe that I get to work with, they run Estee Lauder. And there was
Yes.
the Lauder had their own floor, the corporate floor,
Mm.
and which was decorated actually differently than the rest of the company. It had antiques. It was very
Huh.
it was much more my vibe
Mm.
than everything that was, white. Everything else was clean, white, corporate. And the Lauder
Yes.
floor it looked like an apartment on Park Avenue. It was so cool. So I had
That's
access
so
to
fun.
the Lauder floor, and not very many people in the company did. And I got to do things like the A&E made an episode of biography on Mrs. Estee Lauder, and my job was to help the company sort of, I kind of worked with the producers, and
Mm.
the security at Estee Lauder was pretty tight. You're
I
not
can
allowed to
imagine.
move anything. Mrs. Estee Lauder's office was left in the exact same condition that it was when she left the company for the last time. There was a compact on her
Wow.
desk,
You
a
were
pen.
there for that?
Yes, you weren't. No, I wasn't there for her last day, but it was left exactly as she left it. But the A&E biography people, like, they came in and they
No.
wanted to move stuff, and I learned, well, you can't move stuff. There's one man in the company that's allowed to move stuff. I'm going to call him. So that was it was really exciting. I got to go on photo shoots. We did a photo shoot of Evelyn Lauder's bathroom, which is like, Evelyn Lauder's
Oh
bathroom
my
was not
gosh.
like a bathroom you and I have. So I did a lot of
Yes.
things with events, and if the Lauders were going to be in a magazine or on TV. I worked with the BC Breast Cancer Research Foundation.
Wow.
It was kind of a glamorous job, honestly.
That sounds like a dream job.
It was really fun. I have to say, I loved
Hmm.
it. And when I didn't know that I wanted to do PR. As soon as I started doing PR, I was like, yeah, this
Mm.
is for me. I love
This is for me. Oh my gosh, that's so
it.
exciting. And so, fast forward, you know, what happened then? Like, I know at one point you started your own PR firm, but sort of what led up to that for you to start something of your
That
own?
was
Like, what did that look like?
that was many years later. From working
Hmm.
in corporate PR at Lauder, I ended up working in one of the divisions with the brands in international PR. And actually, the first brand that I worked on was La Mer. So it was pretty cool to be this 26-year-old woman slathering La Mer all over myself, and we worked with
Did you have
journalists
like
all over the
unlimited
world.
stock?
Big closet full of La Mer. We had these giant product closets that were filled with products. And you just go, oh, I need a lipstick. Let me go into the closet. And the cool thing is,
Yeah.
I did PR for a bunch. Lauder, Donna Karan, Tommy Hilfiger Toiletries were all in the same division, La Mer. And, the PR people sat on a floor together. It was almost like a sorority in a way. Oh, there were men too, but, and you just say, well, I want a new lipstick. And you run down to the Bobbi Brown PR and be like, hey, can you give me a lipstick? It was like unlimited beauty products.
Wow.
And from there,
That is amazing.
it was just like, we were so spoiled. I mean, I still love all the swag that I get, but that was the beginning of the swag. And from there, I worked in tech PR for a year, which I hated. And then I went back to beauty, and I worked at L'Oreal in the professional hair care division. And from there, I went to LVMH, where I worked for Guerlain, Givenchy, and Aqua di Parma. And then they sold half of my division at LVMH, and we were all out of work. So that's when I started. That's when I went out on my own. I was doing nothing. I was looking for a job.
Huh.
And a friend of mine said, I'm working, a friend of mine who also got laid off from the company said, I'm working with this little Italian fragrance brand, and I don't know if you could do anything for them, get them press. So I said, well, I'm not doing anything anyway. Let me just do it. You don't have to pay me anything. And this brand took off right away. We had a huge piece in Vogue. It was just really successful. So she said,
what brand was that?
They want to pay you. It was Carthusia. It was a Carthusia Profumi de Capri. It was a fragrance from the Isle of Capri. Capri. It's a beautiful story. But once that took off, the distributor said, well, I'm going to give you more brands. And
I love that.
They gave me more brands. Everything was word of mouth. And about maybe not even a year. Maybe not even a year after that, I got a call from my old stomping grounds at LVMH, and they called me and they said, we need you to come back. No one knows anything about Guerlain. You need to come back and you'll be the PR director. I was like, well, I have a company of 6 clients. And then they said, we'll be your client. So Givenchy and Guerlain were 2 of my clients. Yeah, that was wonderful.
That is literally amazing. Like, that is the coolest story.
It was wonderful to be, and I got to work with Kathy O'Brien, who's now the CEO of Naturopathica, who I worked with at Lauder, ended up as CEO of that division at LVMH. And Kathy is so brilliant, and I really look up to her. So it was super fun to get to work with Kathy again, and to work with these gorgeous brands that I loved working with, as in corporate life. But they were my clients for, until we found a new PR director for them. But it was super fun.
Wow. That's incredible. And what would you say, like, from those early years in working in corporate, what would you say were some of, like, the biggest learning lessons that you took away?
I feel like I learned a lot, honestly, at Estee Lauder. I feel like Lauder really, they know how to do their PR. And I still have so many friends from Estee Lauder. And these people are all, including Nikki Gersten, who actually works with me now. Nikki was senior to me at Lauder. And I feel like the biggest lesson that I learned from them, 2 things. One of them was attention to detail. And when we used to organize events at Lauder, we would do things in army time, just to make sure it was like very regimented. The other thing I learned is that PR is just about making people comfortable. It's about being kind and generous and making the other people feel comfortable. That's
what do you mean?
Can
you elaborate?
Making others comfortable. Well, it's about leaving your ego at the door. I feel like I learned that I'm a service person to the media. Whatever they need, it's my job to get it to them. And it's also my job to, have friendships, relationships. I have some of the best friendships that I have are with media and old colleagues. I learned to, there's a funny story that years later, I worked constantly with Town and Country. When I worked with Guerlain, the beauty editor at Town and Country, we used to take editors out to lunches and to build breakfast to build relationships. It went from when you were an editor. But the editor at Town and Country, the beauty editor, she only wanted to go to McDonald's. That was her favorite. And she said, I keep telling the PRs, and I want my Big Mac, and no one will take me to McDonald's. They don't take it seriously. So I took her to McDonald's, and I used to call her up on the phone, and I would sing the jingle. I would go, hey, Melissa, Big Mac, filet of fish, quarter pounder, French fries, icy Coke, thick shake, sundaes, and apple pies. We're going. I did what she wanted to do because That's how you build relationships with people. She wanted to go to Mickey D's. I took her. And then, I got yelled at when my boss did that, but that's what she wanted. And that's, that's
is
why I have a good
hilarious.
relationship. I'm friends with her to this day because, that's how you build a relationship.
So I want to put a pin in this because that's, I think, maybe what you mean when you say attention to detail is actually listening to what the other person is saying they like or need or want or enjoy versus pushing an agenda. Would you say that's what you mean by attention to detail, or is it something else beyond that?
That's a big part of it, listening to what they need, but also when you have, when you have an event for a product that has seaweed in it, you might want to have a seashell shaped gift, or you might want to have a fish for dinner. Little details like that.
I see.
I learned to keep my nails short when I worked with color, because I'd be touching people's faces. So and I kept them a neutral color and very short. Sugar daddy, not brighter colors, because I was touching people's faces and I thought, well, I don't want them to see these giant, these red nails might put them off. So little things like that. But also,
this is fascinating.
Really listening.
And then you touch. You're saying really listening.
Mm-hmm. Really listening to what they're asking me for, and not a lot of people have an idea of what PR is, what editors want. And I remember so many clients saying, we're going to have an event. We're going to have salmon and blueberries because that's good for your skin, or we're going to have sushi. And because the editors never ate sushi. I mean, these things that everybody thinks go on, they don't go on.
Yeah.
Melissa wanted to eat McDonald's. She doesn't want sushi. She's had sushi. She's eaten Cipriani 50 times. Maybe they want something different.
Right.
Or knowing that an editor, like when you were at Glamour, knowing that that's an editor that really loves fragrance. And I was just telling one of my fragrance clients, this particular editor loves vetiver, so we know what to send her. Things like the details like that, remembering this is a person who likes this particular fragrance, so I'm not going to send her something with rose. She loves vetiver. That's what we'll do.
Oh, you're so good. You're so good at what you do. So
thank you.
When you said something that was interesting that stood out to me. You said Estee Lauder, they know how to do PR. What did you mean by that?
I happened to have the privilege of working for two women who had been at the company for many years and had loads of experience. I still talk to them both. And I felt like that was instrumental. But they taught us, I feel like they taught us that attention to detail thing, and to listen and be kind to people. Like, to be very giving. I feel like that was what I learned. I'm always trying to, if I take you out to dinner as an editor, I want to make sure we go to the restaurant you want to go to, not the restaurant I want to go to, or the trendy restaurant. They taught me, I feel like if I had to sum up what PR is, I would say it's always touching people, and not physically. It's always touching. It's almost like you're trying to touch their heart. You're trying to connect with the person. I learned that at Lauder.
I love that so much. And what I'm hearing is that it's not about the hard push, the hard selling. It's about building those relationships. And you're so good at doing that naturally. And that's probably what this person who ended up, recommending you to that first job of yours, that's probably what they saw in you. Do you think that's shifted in any way in recent times, or do you feel like that's still the way that PR is?
Absolutely not. It's the same. There are I was telling somebody that I work with that is a new client, that they were saying, well, PR is different now. It is, but some things remain the same, and that's one of them. The connection, the touching people's hearts, the kindness, the attention to their, what they're thinking and feeling and wanting, that has never changed.
Okay, so what do you think has changed? Like, is there anything that you feel that has changed in the modern media landscape and from the PR side as well?
Well, for one thing, before the recession in the late 2000s, there used to be a lot more money spent on things. I worked somewhere where they sent lipsticks out in Gucci bags. We gave editors Burberry scarves for Christmas. I feel like that happens. Gifting happens less, which I really miss, because L'Oreal, we used to give whatever the PR of Lancome gave to the editor, she also gave to me, and I gave her my gift. Like, that was so much fun. We got so many amazing gifts.
I love that.
I feel like that went away.
Oh my gosh.
And the kind of PR you saw on TV went away. Like, that's not, the big budget stuff went away. People were doing smaller things, which is fine. The gimmicky stuff went away. There's a lot. One of the things that's really different is there's a lot more media to work with. There are a lot more, especially now that so much is digital. There's just a lot more media outlets, a lot more journalists.
That's so interesting, because in some way things have become smaller too, in terms of like print. Print has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, less publications shutting down or going in, going from, monthly to quarterly to just digital. But yet on the flip side, what you're sharing is like, yes. And also there's been these other publications, digital publications, that have started and opened and have continued. So as a result, there's more to work with, and influencers too.
And influencers. We didn't have. Yes. There's so many more different kinds of media. There's so many different places that as a PR you can place your clients. And I think that's exciting. We used to, back in the day, we'd line up 50 gift bags. We'd dump an eyeshadow in each one. We'd send them out. And then we'd call them. And my boss would stand outside the door, her office, and go, I don't hear you making follow-up calls. I want to hear the follow-up calls. And we don't do that. It doesn't work that way anymore. But there's a lot of freelance writers that will write for many publications. So our media lists just keep getting bigger and bigger. There are advantages to that.
Would you say that freelance the media? Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Freelance writers will often write for more than one publication. So if you make a connection with someone who writes for the Wall Street Journal, she might also write for Vogue and Vanity Fair.
Exactly. And would you say also, like, I guess desk size have changed too, because it used to be that everything was desk side, hence the name. You would have these meetings with editors by their desk. And now so much of that is virtual too.
Yes. I was doing desk sides when a lot of people were like, desk sides are dead. I was doing them the day before lockdown in 2020. We were on a desk side. We were doing desk sides right before. So,
That's crazy.
I was hanging on to them because they are effective. They are very effective. We do virtual desk sides. We'll do a Zoom desk side where people are invited to come be on Zoom with us. And there are benefits to that, because there's an editor who lives in North Dakota for a big publication. She can come. If we had an event in New York, she wouldn't be able to come. So there are benefits to it. But I think people love in-person events too, that more,
and they're coming
rather
back.
than desk side. and they're coming back, and people are really enjoying in-person events versus desk sites that are one-on-one. They're loving events. So
Absolutely.
I think that that's fabulous, and I feel like events are more popular than they used to be.
Yes, absolutely. I think there were so many events. Like I remember when I was at Glamour, I mean, the onslaught of events and invitations was so much so that I got to go to some of them as a just starting out in the beauty industry and in editorial. I got to go to so many really cool ones because my boss wasn't able to make all of them, and the writers weren't able to make
Right.
all of
So
them. So I
many.
got to go to so many as a result. So okay, Aimee, tell me a little bit more about, as you've been in the industry, in the beauty industry and in PR for so many years, when brands come to you, do you have a knack now at this point to know if something's going to be like a slam dunk? Are you able to spot like the next big thing? And is there any intuition involved in that, or are there any specific signs that you look for?
I like to think so, and I have a pretty good track record. I do feel like I'm not usually wrong. Um, the main thing that I look for is a point of difference, something unique, something that has a really cool story. And I guess the second thing that I look at is packaging. If it has great packaging,
Interesting.
it'll do well, because if you think about it, if you're reading, I know we don't have many magazines. If you're reading a magazine or you're looking at something online, even if you're looking at something on Instagram, you're only seeing it for the first time. You can't smell it or feel the texture of
Right.
it. So that's your exposure to skincare or fragrance, or, you can see the colors of makeup, but you can't feel, how creamy the eyeshadow is. So the way something looks is very important, because that's the first impression that the consumer is going to get. And the publications want something enticing and beautiful to feature.
That's
So if it
true.
has great
And so I
packaging,
would just want to
slam
clarify.
dunk.
I do want to clarify to everyone who's listening. We're talking about primary packaging here, not secondary packaging, because most of the time, we're not. No one. Most of the time, publications and influencers, they're not photographing secondary packaging. They're just photographing the primary packaging. So the bottle, the container.
I used to joke that my autobiography is going to be called "They Don't Shoot the Box," because
I love that.
no one
You
wants a
taught me
photograph
that.
of the box. Don't shoot the box. Great box, but don't expect it
Exactly.
to appear in a publication.
Exactly. And I know this is not like common knowledge either. You're the one who taught me that, by the way. I learned so much from you in the first place. And so tell me, like, you mentioned, how you're not, if there's a new eyeshadow, like it's hard to tell what that actually feels like, what it might smell like. Do you feel like there's, something that's been lost in that human touchness, or that, how everything's digital, so much of PR and media is digital now. Do you feel like there's been a little bit of a loss of that magic as a result?
I should say yes, but I don't think so, because I think you can be really good with descriptions. I represent a beautiful candle line, and I sent an email to someone I work with all the time, and said, I think you'll love this candle line. And she said, how could I not? The descriptions of the fragrances are so enticing. She said, kudos to their copywriter. I wrote the descriptions. I was really happy. You can do a
Of
lot
course.
with language, with visual. I was, yeah, their copywriter rocks. It's me. So, and
Of
also,
course.
yeah, it was
Aimee, finish your thought. Hector, can you cut that part out? We're on a
I'm
delay
sorry.
here. Like there's an internet delay. So, which is
Okay.
why we're kind of interrupting each other. So I'm just finish your thought. Just finish your thought. We'll cut this part out.
What was my connecting. The other thing too is having that personal touch, that human touch when you reach out to someone digitally, is saying to them like, hey, how's your summer going? Or, I know that one of the editors has a bulldog and I love bulldogs, and I'll mention the bulldog. It's also having that personal connection, which will entice them to want to read the rest of what you're saying, to look at the product. And, maybe they want to try something if it sounds enticing, if you have great fragrance descriptions, if your visual is really, really striking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So I wanted to go back to what about like the intuition or the signs that you look for like that next big thing. Is there anything about like the founder itself, or obviously innovation always is something that will stand out, but do you ever get signs from maybe based off of the founder or their backstory, or based off of like maybe some unique new technology, or is it more about the founder? Is it more about the product? Is it a combo of the two? Like, what is your experience?
It's a combo of the two, but if you meet a founder that's just really has a compelling backstory, has an interesting inspiration behind the product. They're a dermatologist. I have a new client where it's two men, and one of them, has done all this work with positive psychology. That's really, really unique for a fragrance brand. And sometimes also there are founders that are just like personality plus, that people are going to love them. So of course the press is going to love them.
Mm-hmm.
I had the virtual desk sides that we discussed yesterday with a founder. And I mean,
yes,
she was really engaging and fun, and everyone just fell in love with her. And when I met her, I knew that it didn't matter almost what we showed the press. They were going to love her, and they were going to want to write about whatever it is that she created, even though what she created is magnificent and has beautiful packaging, a compelling story, and smells delicious. I knew that they were going to fall in love with her, which they did.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Absolutely. So the founder does make a difference. But of course, when it comes to, if you're able to meet with them in person, then of course that would make it easier for that founder to charm and bring that brand to life. But
Yes.
through digital, that copy, that messaging really, and that innovation really does make a difference.
Absolutely.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about, have you noticed any emerging trends in beauty, health, lifestyle, wellness space that you find particularly interesting, particularly promising?
This brand actually that I mentioned, that has the positive psychology component, I found that really interesting, because I think that we are trending towards products that have more of a wellness angle versus things that solve a problem. I feel like there's a big trend towards things that not only make you look good, but make you feel good. That the importance of the brand is an experiential. Mm-hmm. There's also I keep bringing up this brand because I love it, but it's also neuro fragrance, and neuro cosmetics, I think, was at the forefront of this trend of feel good beauty. And I love to see that, because I'm a big fan of aromatherapy. So that's the first kind of feel good beauty that most people are familiar with. So I think it's really lovely that that brand founders and the industry in general is caring about how we feel and not just how we look.
Absolutely. And when we feel good, we look good.
Yeah.
So, Aimee, tell us, since you worked with many indie brands, and indie brands notoriously don't have a huge budget. So, what are the first steps that they should take? What do you think founders should take to get noticed by major publications? Is there any recommendations that you have for brands that are just getting started to get noticed by media?
They should work with you. They should work with you, and that will help them tremendously. They should work with you or someone like
Hmm.
you. Um, because one of the
That's so sweet.
they need to, it's true. They need to get their messaging nailed down and their mission nailed
Mm,
down, their visuals. The website needs to be compelling. PR is last. And sales is last. You need to have a great story that resonates. Everything needs to be lined up perfectly. Otherwise, even if you do get press and it's amazing press, people will go to your website, they won't buy anything because
mm,
the story that
absolutely.
the story won't, they won't connect with it. And that's happened a few times when I've worked with people. They get tons of amazing
Absolutely.
press, and the press that might sell 400 candles for a brand that's more buttoned up doesn't do the same thing for them because their messaging isn't on point, or they have not that great pictures. I try to, when I meet somebody, determine if they really are ready and that they have everything lined
Right.
up. And it'll I'm very fortunate in that I have a steady stream of referrals and I meet people on Instagram a lot. That I'm always talking to brands about working. I'm very, very fortunate, and thank you because you're someone who refers people to me. And I, I would say half the people I
You're the
meet are
best.
not ready to have. Oh, thank you. Half the people I meet, really,
Yes,
maybe a little bit less than, they're not ready. They're not done with other things that they need to do first before they jump into PR.
absolutely. I would 1,010% agree. I people jump to PR, which is step like 20 when they're at step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and they think they're at step 20,
Exactly.
but they're missing like step like 5 to 20. And so there's this whole gap, and then there becomes an issue if you start PR too early that you're spending a lot of
Yeah.
money and investing in PR, but the pitches aren't necessarily landing. And they're not resonating because the stories are off, or the differentiating factors, or the different storylines are just off or not dialed in yet. They may not even know who their
A good
customer is exactly.
Exactly. A good PR person will send you away when they see that.
Yes, yes, absolutely. And then, okay, so what about like, you know, lessons from the big boys or the big girls for an indie brand
The
that
big
doesn't
company.
have like a, or yes. So like, what lessons are, you've worked with some big names, obviously, and you've also worked with these small brands as well. So what are some of the lessons that
Mm.
indie brands can learn from the big players and vice versa?
Lesson number one is that you don't necessarily need a gimmick. Your product is strong. It should be strong enough on its own to entice the editors. You do not need to send out a box with chocolate. Don't send chocolates because they melt. Like, don't send food. I don't know why everybody wants to send food. Um, don't send food to people and have a rotting creme brulee sitting on somebody's desk for 3 days because
Oh my gosh, such a
that's a
great
real
point.
story that really
Such a great
happened.
point.
Yeah. So
I'm
don't
sure.
send food. Need, you don't need a lot of money to send this fancy mailing with all of these gifts. If a big brand is giving Tiffany pearl earrings at their event, you're not going to match that. You're not going to be able to do, they don't want like a pillow with your brand on it. So learn that your product is good enough to stand on its own. That's one thing. If you want to do some kind of creative
Hmm.
mailing, cool, but you don't need it.
I like that.
That's a really important thing. people think that they need to do so much and it's so complicated. And sometimes even working at big brands, we didn't do that stuff. We didn't always do, a huge event, or believe it or not, Guerlain and Aqua de Parma had pretty small budgets when I worked there. So you had to make a little look like a lot. So we weren't always doing these fancy things. Sometimes we were just sending the fragrance in a bag with a note.
Right. And so beyond that, were there other creative things that you did that were on a lower budget? Or that you've done recently, things that like clever things or creative ways to get noticed by an editor, but that were lower budget?
One thing that we did at Guerlain that was really interesting is we didn't have enough money to send everybody to Paris. And so what we did was we had a raffle. We made a raffle and we sent out I got these cute little lucite boxes, and we put French treats in them. We put a Madeleine, and we put some, tea from Fauchon, and we sent out this little box. It didn't cost us very much. We delivered them ourselves because they were complicated, and we put a raffle ticket in and said, it said, if you want to be entered in this raffle for a trip to Paris, you have to call me. And I can't even remember what we asked them to do. You have to call me and tell me your favorite French thing. I think that's what it was. And if you don't call me or you don't email me with this information, you're not entered in the raffle. And then we put all the names into a bag and we picked somebody, and that person got to go to Paris and stay at the Georges V and have a fabulous time and not be bothered by us about press. But everybody was excited about that one. So that's something we did with a small budget made a big impact. Don't think Guerlain had a big budget because it didn't. So you could do something like that too. I'd love to replicate that for someone again. I thought that was really a fun thing that we did.
Absolutely.
The other thing
that's super fun.
The other thing that's an out of the box thing, and it's not really something that exciting, is being available to the press for the July weekend between Christmas and New Year's, because 99% of the time, I always tell, I did a mailing for I worked for Maya Chia. Maya Chia was my client back in the day, and Maya Chia, we did a mailing for them. We sent out samples of her new product during the holidays. And everybody said, this is like really dumb. No one's going to pay attention. No one's working during the holidays. Everybody is still looking for stuff during the holidays. They still have to file stories. They still need content. Well, I was the only one who was paying attention during the holidays. We got so much press for them because of that timing. Always be available when other people are not, because I've had somebody email me, I'm desperate for Oprah Daily. One of the editors emailed me and said, I'm desperate for a fragrance expert because I work with lots of perfumers. At the time, I didn't have any perfumers, and she said, it's Friday night. Could you just do it? Could you just answer a few questions about fragrance and you'll be the fragrance expert? And it's because I was there. I was in the right place at the right time, and I was available. So be available. That's not as exciting as a raffle for a trip to Paris, but it's something that works that not a lot of people do.
Tried and true. And that's something I remember you telling me about the holiday season, because I remember you and I working on a project together, on a client together, and we were looking at timeline and pitching something, and I was like, well, should we do something during maybe we shouldn't send something during the holidays? And you're like, actually, I think it might be a great time to send something during that last week of December, because of this very reason where no one else is going to send them anything. And I'll never forget that.
It's so true. It works every time, and no one ever believes me.
Until they listen to this episode.
I just found this out if they believe me. I just had somebody on the phone who was like, well, I don't know if we should, if we should even do PR in December. I was like, you're going to want to do PR in December. It's like, you think everybody stops working, but the PR people stop working, but the editors don't. They still need us.
Right. They still have to write stories. It's not like media doesn't stop just because there's holidays happening.
They don't get to go on, on vacation.
Absolutely. So, okay. Are there any like misconceptions that you think brands have about PR today? Are there any sort of like misconceptions that you encounter often? Or
I think one big thing that people are really intimidated by the editors and journalists, and they don't need to be. They're just normal people like us, and they're really, most people are just really super nice, and they just are looking for they're looking for information. They're looking for something new to talk about. They do want to hear from you. That's one misconception that people have. They're nervous that they're not going to say the right thing or do the right thing. They do want to hear from you because they are looking for brands like yours to feature.
Right.
And I think another thing is that we touched on this a bit, but people think you need a big budget, and they think you need a gimmicky thing, and they think you need a special box, and you really don't. Like you can do a lot with very, very little.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay. And can you spotlight some crazy PR experiences that you've had? Like, what are some of the most unconventional or unexpected strategies you've ever used to get noticed? Did it work? Was it a disaster?
Oh gosh. I should have a million answers to this question, but I can't think of anything. One of the things, this is not really wild or anything, but I had a fragrance brand that just was not appealing to the mainstream press at all. And so we went after the fragrance influencer community, which people didn't work with influencers as much at the time. And we specifically went after men because they had great men's fragrances and the women's fragrances didn't do as well. So we went after these we decided to focus on these, men have huge fragrance collections. Like the people I was featured in Elle magazine for my fragrance collection. I had 125 bottles. The guys who collect fragrance, they have 500. They have special displays for them. So knowing that, I decided to go for men. I decided to really focus on male influencers that reviewed fragrance. That company blew up when we did that. So it isn't like super spicy. But
there are some really, like, I know in our case, like, there were so many amazing, like, what are they called? Like fume heads or perfume heads? Like people who have these elaborate YouTube channels.
Frame heads.
Yes, frame heads. Like these YouTube channels and these YouTube platforms specifically reviewing fragrances, niche fragrances on a weekly basis. And the collections that some of these fragrance connoisseurs had was just wild. But it was one of the smartest things that we did was to like go directly to these connoisseurs and send them product. And then like it was really interesting. Like once one connoisseur reviewed us, it almost gave credence for others to review us and then others from there. And then it kind of like spiraled into like all of these influencers starting to review our fragrances. And it was really exciting because they were used to typically reviewing like the Le Labos and the Parfum de Marly's of the world and the Tom Fords and, those type of niche fragrances, and then there was us kind of trying to break through into this niche world, and they were comparing us to like Tom Ford's, and that was a breakthrough moment. I remember for us is like knowing that niche and getting in that niche versus like, oh, let me just go to this million plus influencer who has all these followers, but it may not actually translate to any traction. I actually found that was what resulted in a strong traction for us, was partnering with these, not even partnering, but like, sending and sharing our fragrances with these fragrance heads, and then going to some of these like smaller fragrance events. Like, gosh, there's one that I'm thinking of, and I know because you've been to it, I'm sure. Yes, thank you, Sniffapalooza, which is like the like niche like one of the original niche fragrance events, and that's where you meet all these like fragrance connoisseurs.
And there's something like this for every product, for every type of company. Correct. There are makeup gurus there. I'm sure, I watch so many makeup gurus on YouTube. There are makeup gurus. There's people who love skincare and feature skincare. There's something for every category. The fragrance people are a really good example, because some of these people had very small followings and grew very, very quickly. So if you got in with them early, like you did, that's huge. But there's something like this for everyone, for any product.
And not only that, but also looking at subcategories too at this point, where it's not just like skincare, but it's like skincare for like fungal acne, and skincare for over 40, and skincare for this, and skincare for that, or fragrance for this and fragrance for that. They're now, we have subcategories that have their own niche followings, their own sort of audiences within a broader audience that you can tap into. So it's getting much like, to your point, Aimee, circling back to our, what you initially said about attention to detail, is having that very specific attention to detail. Like, who is my target customer? What is their, the smaller category that they are a part of? And tapping into that smaller category and the people that have influence or impression on others in that, hyper category.
Just because you read Vogue doesn't mean your customer does. That's a good example.
Yes. Oh my God. The biggest take, that's so important. I think I'm glad you brought that up, because I think a lot of times when we're even in our workshops that we do, or if we're working with somebody one-on-one, there's that dream of like, I want to be in Elle, or I want to be in Vogue, or, there's that sort of epitome of what success looks like in media. But like, does your target customer actually read that or listen to that? Like, are they actually like looking at that? Because if they're not, then like, what's the ultimate goal that you're trying to achieve? Is it clout? Is it the ability to say like, hey, I'm in Vogue? Or is it that you actually want more sales, or you want more reach?
Mm-hmm.
And the reach comes from like wait, say that again, Aimee?
A clout doesn't sell your product. And if you pitch your product to Vogue and your customer is not reading Vogue, Vogue might not want to feature you anyway, because they'll see that. And then you wasted time pitching your product to not your audience. Just because you shop at Bergdorf Goodman doesn't mean your customer shops at Bergdorf Goodman.
Exactly. That's exactly right. And so it's super important, again, going back to like dialing in on who your target customer is, knowing exactly their psychographics and kind of the journey that they're on beyond demographics.
Yes.
In order to understand which outlets are actually going to be a great match.
Yes. And then, and you should research that. You should, I think that Who, What, Where would be a great place for my fragrance. Read it. Look at the people that write about fragrance. Look at the kind of stories they're doing, like really know these outlets. When obviously you're going to pitch to a lot of people, you can't know every outlet, but know your top 10, like inside and out. For some people, I just talked to somebody today. Southern living for them is the ultimate get. For other people, Women's Day is the ultimate placement. For somebody else, it might be a local publication in California. It's all different. So you have to determine
Absolutely.
where your customer lives, what they like to do, what kind of publications they're paying attention to. If you have a Gen Z customer, they're not reading Esquire. They're on TikTok. If you have an older
Exactly.
customer, it's different. You have to think about not just age, like you said, looking at what they do, what their habits, looking at psychographics, looking at more than just this is an over 40 woman with disposable income. There's so many differences between me as an over 50 woman and another over 50 woman. We're all
Absolutely.
We're all different.
Maximalism versus minimalism. Like one of the things that I noticed that is often yes. Like and also like looking at, I notice like sometimes I hear this a lot where, I hear this assumption being made a lot and it's not tested. Like they're not necessarily surveying their audience to validate this. But for example, women in their, late 30s or early 40s who have young kids, I hear often an assumption of founders who are targeting this demographic that these are people who won't be doing 12 steps skincare, 7-step skincare routines. They're busy. They don't have time. They're not going to invest their time into this full routine. And I actually personally find that to be quite a generalization. And I always say, like, has this been tested? Like, I'm doing 7-step, like I'm not that, like I can't resonate with that. Like that, then like if you make that generalization, you're losing out on a whole customer base. Like that could, yeah,
exactly. Every woman that I know that's in that age range is using Korean skincare with multiple steps. I've heard from people that that's their time that they have for themselves. Yes, they're busy, but their skincare is a ritual to them. So I know more people that are in your situation than not.
Right. And neither is wrong or right. It's just a matter of like, make sure you're clear on like if your target customer is that minimalist where they are looking for that 1 or 2 step routine, that's great. And you need to test that and validate that. But you can't assume that everybody that kind of falls under this bracket like is wanting to be a minimalist, a 2-step routine. That might be the case for you and maybe the few people that you've spoken to, but it does need to be tested and validated. Not to belabor this point too much, but and also I just want to make a note and point out that like never underestimate, going back to the example of knowing your target customer, knowing the media outlets that they're reading or listening to or watching. Don't underestimate like certain very niche and targeted or certain publications that may feel like isn't something that your audience is reading or listening to or watching. And to make that point come to light, Aimee, when Aimee was helping me with my brand and pitching our brand, Nomatera, our fragrance brand, to publications, she, had pitched Prevention Magazine, and she had gotten us all this amazing press, but she pitched us. Yeah, and you had pitched us to Prevention Magazine, and it ended up getting featured. It was our Miami Orange Blossom fragrance. There was a tiny little line. First of all, I had no idea what Prevention Magazine was. Like when I started Nomatera, I was like a 20-something-year-old. I had no idea what prevention was. Like I was like, I don't even know who their target audience is. And Aimee, you ended up, apologizing for the placement because it was just this one little tiny line, no picture, no nothing.
Yes.
Right?
Yes. And this was the best thing ever for you. And who knew?
Mm-hmm. Lo and behold, it brought in more sales than anything else for months. I mean, months and months and months of like selling this one fragrance. And I was like, I knew it was because of this placement, because it was the only placement during that time, during a period of time that specifically mentioned the Miami Orange Blossom fragrance.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just so interesting. So like my point in sharing that is like, don't underestimate certain publications. It's like, oh, that feels really like lowbrow or not cool or whatever. You never know. You never know. And you might
Don't ever
know
know
if you
yourself
do
in
that more
anything.
of that target. Yes. And of course you might know if you're doing more of that deeper target audience work and really looking at the data and analyzing data. But if you aren't, there could be publications that really or outlets that really resonate with your brand that were totally unexpected.
That's the greatest story. I tell that story all the time because it illustrates that point of you never know what's going to happen. You never know what press is going to do for you. And it's always, we
Absolutely.
used to have this, there used to be this saying that with advertising you pay and with press, with PR you pay. No, reverse that. With advertising you pay and with PR you pray, because you never know what you're going to get and you never know what the result is going to be. And we weren't praying for prevention.
Absolutely.
It was sort of like, okay, if we get prevention, that would be nice, but we're praying for
Mm-hmm.
Vogue. We weren't praying for prevention, and it was the answer to your prayers. Who
No.
knew?
Yeah, exactly. And you were like, just be open to it. I was like, okay. Okay, so after I've a couple more questions. One question I have is, after decades of being in this industry, how do you stay ahead of the curve and avoid getting stuck in old ways of doing things?
I spend time with a lot of young people. That's one thing. And I am
Hmm.
very excited that young people want to talk to me. And, I used to have a group of young women that we would meet in New York and we would have lunch, and they wanted to run ideas by me, staying on top of trends, spending a lot of time on TikTok. That's one thing, is just not being set in your ways as a human, not being open as a
Hmm.
person. Never mind being a PR person, but always looking also at emerging technologies, different ways people are doing things, and being very open minded. I remember when when blogs started to appear way back when, and people, other people that did my job were like, I don't want to work with those people. So many people turn their noses up at bloggers and influencers.
Right.
And I didn't do that because first of all, I thought it was super fun that people were doing this, and
Yeah.
that everybody could be an influencer, not just the editor of Vogue, that we could all share our point of view. I thought it was just cool. But a lot of people in
Right.
my industry that are my vintage did not want to work with people like that. So I think it's just important to see what's emerging, and also what if you're attracted to something like I was attracted to in the influencer community right away. You might be onto something. If you personally like
Yeah.
it, other people are personally liking it also.
Absolutely. And I love that about you. I love that you like this, just like a very recent example. You and I were chatting and you're like, there's all these really cool trends happening, like makeup trends happening on TikTok. And we need one of our clients that, we're working on inside our beauty brand mastermind is a makeup artist. And you were like, have her talk about octopus brows. And like, that's what's trending right now on TikTok. Like, can she speak on this? And I'm like, what the? F are octopus brows.
What the heck
And
are octopus
also
brows?
like, yes. And then, then we spoke with the client, and she was like, okay, let me write up something about octopus brows. And lo and behold, it's getting featured.
Big feature on PS on Pop Sugar. Big feature. Only interviewed her. Octopus brows. Like,
It's
who knew?
amazing.
You wouldn't think.
Who knew?
You wouldn't think
But
a
like the point is that
53-year-old
like
woman knows about octopus brows.
I
The
know,
point
but
is
like
that
that's the point.
yes, keep your eyes open. Keep your eyes open and be open to new ways of doing things, because as much as PR is the same, we are service people to the media. We always want to be kind. We want to touch people's hearts. There are new ways of doing things. And I always try to be at the forefront of the new methods and the new ways people are doing things. It's just fun. It's fun to keep up with
It's
what's
fun.
going on around you. Yes.
That's so much of what PR is. Like it does, what's so nice about PR is being able to stay abreast of the trends. Like I feel like being in this industry on this, coming from a PR standpoint, you're always kind of attuned to what's happening, what's new, what's different. And it's so fun.
You have an excuse to spend a lot of time on TikTok.
Yeah, exactly. We do. So, okay, Aimee, I want to close out our interview here with, can you tell us a crazy story from your PR days, from all your days in PR? Can you tell us a crazy story that you experienced that you're able to share? Because you have so many stories. The things that you've told me are just like, I'm always just like, tell me more. I'm just listening. Aimee could write a book about what the PR, about the PR world and clients and brands and the glitz and the glamour and like all the things that have happened in this space. But can you share a story with us?
Oh my God. The story that comes to mind involves vomit, so I wouldn't share that one. But
Okay.
I remember, that's actually really funny. I remember when I first started my company, I was fresh out of working at LVMH and I started my company. The first company that approached me was a company that made products for vaginas. And I know that this is a big category now, but it was, back then it wasn't. And she had a big budget and she really wanted to work together. And I happened to be talking to one of the beauty editors at Vogue right after this person approached me. And I was friendly with this woman and I was telling her, well, it's a lot of money and it's not my personal thing, but people might like having their vagina smell like peach or mango, but maybe it's something. And she said, Aimee, no, because first of all, Vogue doesn't do vaginas. And second of all, you will be vagina girl for the rest of your career. And we remember things that happen. None of us are going to forget. Do you want to be a vagina girl? Think about that. So I'm not vagina girl. I did not take this client. And I think it was a good move. But it was just so funny. Like, don't be vagina girl. It's a lesson to be true to yourself. If you don't feel good about something, don't do it. Don't be vagina girl. Or do if that's your thing.
Or do if that's your thing. And can you give us some of the most... Can you tell us too, some of the most noteworthy or exciting results that you've gotten your clients? Like, I know one of the things that you and I touched on, because we did a holiday gift guide together recently, a workshop together, was, the fact that one client that you worked with got sold $300,000 worth of product because you got them into Oprah's gift guide. Can you give us some juicy, spotlights of like a couple of really amazing kind of wins that you've gotten your clients?
I've had a lot of success with Oprah in particular, and especially during the holidays. And that's always been exciting for people, first of all, but that's always done well. Um, I worked with this beautiful French soap and bath and body brand, and we had pitched Poosh, which is Kourtney Kardashian's site. Oh, and I have another fun celebrity story after I tell this one. And I just pitched it to hopefully be featured on the site. Hopefully if the client just featured in a story on the site, Kourtney Kardashian got a hold of this product, and she fell in love with other products in the line. And pretty recently, she posted an image on Instagram. My client's soap was sitting in her beautiful bathroom on the shelf. So I took that and I ran with it, and we got featured everywhere. We got a huge feature in InStyle from that. And that all started, I have a lot of stories like this. That all started from just trying to get on the website. The other story is when it's Crave Naturals, it's Kristen. And you probably know about this, The Rock. This was The Rock featured Dwayne. And there was an Instagram post where he was brushing his daughter's hair. It was adorable. And the brush really looked like the Crave Naturals brush. It was the same shape. So I actually advised Kristen to contact The Rock's publicist or his manager herself, because I thought it would come off more authentic. So she did. And they said, that's definitely your brush. Wayne is using it. So we sent them a big box. And they were so nice.
Wow.
And maybe a week or two later, an on-air spokesperson for GMA was looking for celebrities that love products that celebrities love. And so I pitched her the Rock story. And of course, it was on air. And of course, they did a great job with it, and everybody loved it. We kind of feasted off that story forever. Like that was
that's incredible.
That was just fantastic. I give one more example. I worked for many, many years with Hope Gillerman, who is the founder of H. Gillerman Organics. One of the best ways to get products into the hands of celebrities is through makeup artists, hairstylists, fashion stylists. If you Google Hope, you'll see that every celebrity uses her products. A lot of that is because I sent the products to Jenna Hip, who was a celebrity nail artist. And she messaged me and said, these are the products I've been dreaming of all my life. And she created manicures and pedicures to use on her celebrity clients before award shows. And that got the product in the hands of celebrities, and they were mentioning it in the press. Jenna basically did my job for me for a long time. And there were also makeup artists who were touting Hope's products. So Hope got a book deal. And the press was a big part. She said the press was a big part of her getting the book deal. So that was incredible. And that's
so cool.
That was for makeup artists and a nail artist. It's a different way of approaching. So I always do that. I always try to go through their artists, because their artists are trusted. And, if you're a celebrity and your makeup artist that you trust says this is a great product or uses the product on you, they're a trusted resource, and you're going to be excited about trying that product.
Of course. Yeah, because they don't have time to be experimenting and trying new products. It's coming from that stylist or artist. And was that the same way for Poosh? Was it through a makeup artist, or through, like, who did it go through?
No. Poosh was just Poosh is Kourtney Kardashian's online publication, online magazine.
No, I know, but was it just okay, got it. That makes sense.
Just through the editor, and Kourtney liked the product I guess she tried the product herself and loved it. And that's how that happened. That was more kind of, it was cool. And that was more kind of random than something where we sent to a makeup artist. We sent to, Susan Sarandon's makeup artist. And we knew that they worked with her and she loved the product. Years and years ago, it was easier to work with celebrities. And I did this, should have brought this up earlier. I did this fun campaign where we picked 50 natural beauties in Hollywood. And I worked with a natural cosmetics line from Germany. And we sent each person through their publicist a package of natural beauty products from the brand. And we said, congratulations, you've been selected as one of our 50 natural beauties. Through that, I got thank you notes and from Susan Sarandon, Lauren Bacall, Renee Zellweger, who was very famous in Hollywood at the time. I forget who it was, but we got a lot of responses to that. And people said Sofia Vergara was another, not from that campaign, but from something similar. And they said, go ahead, tell whoever you want that I love these products. I have a file with all the celebrity notes in the phone.
That is so amazing.
That was a really interesting connection.
That is so amazing, Aimee. Thank you so much for sharing this and for joining me here today. What a wealth of knowledge you are. And it's always so fun to get together with you and chat shop and all these PR and also all the crazy stories that we have and have shared. We'll have to do this again and do another part 2. But thank you. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I had so much fun. Thank you.
This is so much fun. And that's a wrap. So I'll see you guys all on the next episode. Bye, everyone.